Hello, everybody. I actually recognise a couple of names, I believe, from the last webinar I gave. So how many of you are, and I think you can press the hand button to raise your hand, I believe. Yes or no, I don't know anyway, but I just do see a handful of you from last time. But today we're going to be talking about navigating complications in fundraising and generally in committees, and talking through some of the common problems that committees have and ways to avoid or deal with them. So I am going to be covering off some of what I spoke of earlier. I won't go into that much detail because I know that some of you are return visitors, but where relevant, I will touch on them and repeat some things. So let's go on to my first slide. This is just the background. So I am the fundraising whisperer, Mandy Weidmann. I started the fundraising directory with my late business partner, Helen, in 2006. It's a picture of us on the side, me looking very youthful. Helen sadly passed away in 2008, which was devastating. And so since that time, I've been doing it on my own, obviously honouring Helen's memory. And so every year we've published a fundraising directory. This year, actually for the first time, we've decided next year we won't print a publication anymore. The burden of COVID on our industry has been significant, and so it's not the time to ask them to throw money advertising, but it's probably also reached a natural end, just because the online has become more powerful, and clients and the fundraising suppliers find they want sort of a more immediate return from their advertising. I actually just cover off, I am funded by advertising from fundraising suppliers. So like the retail fundraisers, Picture Plate, Fate, amusement ride suppliers, chocolate people, they advertise with me to spread their message. So I put that into a directory, but it's actually become much more than that. I kind of consider myself a not keeper of the knowledge, but a sharer of the knowledge. So I like to share a lot of resources and get people together to help solve problems. So I guess you'd kind of consider me an expert. I've written a book, The Practical Fundraising Handbook for School and Club Volunteers, which I know a handful of you bought last time. Hope you're enjoying it. But I don't really consider myself that because I'm always learning, always getting inspired by creative solutions. And that's why I love to do this stuff, to hear what you guys have to say. A lot of people on Facebook do follow us, although Facebook is getting stingier and stingier with who sees my stuff. So if you look up the Fundraising Whisperer on Facebook and join our email database, I send out emails and I try to make them not boring. Okay, so let's get straight into it. I'm going to cover off, first of all, 10 common mistakes in fundraising, and then I've got a few other problem areas we'll deal with afterwards. There'll be time for questions at the end, so and discussion as well, where you guys can sort of speak about problems you've encountered and how you've avoided them, or that kind of thing. Okay, that all sound good? Great. Okay.
I think I've got my voice working now. Can you hear me?
Oh, Debbie, you're here. Great. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome. Is there anything you wanted to say?
No, basically, if people want to ask a question, they can either put their hand up or they can just type it into the chat. It's probably easier in the chat.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, because I'll keep my eye on the chat as well. Yeah, brilliant. I'll keep my eye on the chat as well, and we'll clear off things as they come in. I'll have to warn you all, and this is an excellent case in point, I'm a creative thinker. So as much as I like to bring structure and order through the presentation, for those of you who are Virgos, I'm actually like, things just come from anywhere and I just share them when they come in. So it can be a bit scatty, but I like to just let it flow. So I'll just share as much as I can as I come across it. Okay. The first problem that we see in fundraising is not having a clear purpose for your fundraising proceeds. A goal unites a community. And I see it all the time. And I think committees often cry out for a purpose, but there's just not one easily available to them. And for this reason, going through just a simple strategy process is very, very important. So everything fits. The fundraising fits into, you know, your overall purpose. And I'm going to touch back on what I cut off in the last seminar, just a couple of minutes. So in my book, I identified 5 secrets of successful committees. And the first one is having a strategic plan. And it doesn't have to be a great big document. You don't need an MBA to put it together. I actually have a template for like a 1-pager in my book. And in fact, I have the first 3 chapters of my book online free. You can read through, and that actually takes you through the guts of this. So totally take a look through it. And it talks about what to have on your agenda before the meeting, who to invite along to your strategic planning session, how to communicate it, how to run a survey. It's very important. I would totally do it. And then you'll understand then where everything fits into that. The second is to communicate expectations. The third is an inclusive culture. And all of these, you know, deserve their own webinar, but I won't dwell on them today. The fourth is effective leadership. The fifth is to retain and pass on knowledge. And since I wrote the book, and I'm considering doing a rewrite, I've added in a 6th, and that is being supported by school and club leadership. So for you guys, it'd be having a supportive principal who works with you, and you're not sort of fighting against them to get things done, and you're sort of all on the same team. Because I've seen amazing committees who are stunted by not being able to do what they, you know, want to do. And unfortunately, you guys don't have control over that. A lot of it is just dependent on who's in charge at the time. Out of all of those 6, just out of, you know, for interest, I chose this one as being the most important, effective leadership. And I suspect that many of you guys who are here today are those leaders, you know, those ones who can help set the plans, help push the strategy process through, bring everybody on board, you know, bring in the handover processes, liaise with the school leadership, all the important things to do. And as much as we want to share that role, and, you know, sometimes it is beautifully shared and you just get a really nice cohesive team, but often it's one person who just is passionate and takes it on. And don't feel down about that if that's you. Because it's such an important role and you make such a difference without even knowing it. I hinted at this, my 1-page strategic plan. And again, it's in the book. I won't dwell on it, but you'll see here, do I get that's right, get a little pointery thing. No, whiteboard. Oh, this is cool. Oh, no, I don't want the whiteboard. I want the that action. There was a cool thing last time where I could just write on it. That's okay. No, it doesn't matter. But you'll see the next to action on the sort of second bottom row, there's a box called fundraising activity. That is your calendar of events, basically, you know, which fundraisers you're running and when. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Debbie. So people, when they think about, you know, let's do fundraising for the year, they just go straight to that without the context of everything else, without understanding what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to achieve it, what resources they need to achieve it, who they're going to get to support them, and all of that. So I'm just saying that the fundraising activity part of it is really, it's a part of a much bigger picture. And don't forget the bigger picture. Okay, so I guess that went back to our problem 1, not having a clear purpose for fundraising proceeds. So I think I've covered that off and how to deal with that in that long-winded thing. So we go to problem number 2, not planning far enough in advance. Not planning far enough in advance, and I'm going to skip forward to problems 3 and 4 because they actually are related. So not planning far enough in advance leads to, pardon me, running the same old fundraisers and relying on the same old volunteers. It's a promise. But the further in advance you plan, and I'll go back here, the further in advance you plan, the more you can delegate. You know, you can actually sit down and go, well, you know, you can microtask, and microtasking is just so important because you can go, okay, who's going to be in charge of decorating the trivia night in 4 months' time? And someone can put their hand up because it's a discrete task. They understand it. It's far enough in advance. They can build it into their busy lives. Chances are they're an optimist. So how crazy busy they are now, they think they won't be then. But if you ask them 2 weeks before, they'll realise that they're always going to be crazy busy and too busy to actually commit. So you get a commitment for them in advance for a particular topic, for a particular area, and they're much more likely just to be able to say, yes, I'll do it. Whereas if you leave the planning later, you'll go, oh, you know, who can help me? You're scrambling around. People are frightened because they're busy and because they think they're going to get sucked into a vortex and it's going to take over their lives. So in the end, it actually ends up taking over your life because you go, oh, God, I'll just get in there and do it all. Whereas if you, I'll put this slide up here. It's a saying I used to hate when I was a kid because I never understood it. And a stitch in time saves 9. So it's basically making sure you have sort of done that stitch back when you could have earlier in the piece to save you doing 9 stitches yourself and running things the same way because you haven't allowed that space to approach things differently. Problem number 5. This is related to that last one, but it's not always. So some organisers think it's easier to just do it themselves and not leave space for others to step up. And again, this almost sounds victim blaming, but it's just not. It's often it is easier in the first instance just to go, oh, well, I need to pick up that prize from blah, 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 like really rather than communicating somebody to help me with that small task, I'll just do it myself, but they add up. So to create the mechanism to communicate those smaller tasks. And I recommend setting up a closed Facebook group of parent supporters and make it clear what the purpose of it is. It's you could call it the hangers-on group or, you know, the help when you can group. It's just so you can put up the little things that people can put their hand up for. The emerging generation of volunteers are known to not like meetings. They like to see purpose in whatever they're doing, and often meetings can be seen as a waste of time. And they like to control how they make a contribution. So the sad part of that is you might not easily get them on board as leaders and organisers, but you need to accept the reality that that's the volunteer base you're dealing with increasingly, and build that in to what you do. So make sure you are completely open with what you're about, why you're doing it, how things are broken up, and how people can make their contributions. Give people lots of options and let people cherry pick for themselves as much as humanly possible. Yes, so, and not leaving space for others to step up. You'd be surprised if you leave space for a little bit, because people on the outside often think that things are under control, because you guys are out there achieving lots, looking busy, being very, very competent. And so they go, well, I'm sort of on the outside. I don't, they've got it under control, and I'm maybe shy and don't want to put my hands up. So I think leaving, and I've got this beautiful image, leaving this white space out, just as much as possible, just going, look, we're most of the way done with this, but we could really get someone to take on the marketing of it. But just, as things come up, and particularly asking people to help with brainstorming, because people who contribute with brainstorming can actually that can turn into action. I'm going to go to problem number 6. I'm not thinking outside the box. People who think outside the box are, I guess, creative thinkers, and not everyone who is a leader in community groups is a creative thinker, and they don't need to be. Like, the world needs the creative people, and it also needs the structured people. But inviting your creative people along for the ride when you're doing some brainstorming and planning, or even when you've got something already planned and you just want to add some extra elements to it, like a bit of fun or just that little bit of spark, just invite people's new ideas. The secret to thinking outside of the box, in my opinion, is allowing people the freedom to make mistakes. What happens in a brainstorming environment for creative people, and again, this is just what I experience, is that 80% of my ideas will be ordinary, like pretty, average, good, or, take it or leave it. 10% will be 20%, 10% will be magic, like just completely off the charts, where everyone will go, wow. And 10% will be complete duds. If you went with that, you would completely bomb the thing. If you put fear into sharing that bottom 10%, you'll never get that top 10%. So it just needs to be a safe environment where you don't just shoot down ideas. You let everything come to light, and then you just filter through them. But saying, oh yeah, we did that 3 years ago and it didn't work, to somebody who's come along to a fresh meeting, like, that's just going to kill the buzz and kill off creativity. So you just need to be open to freshness. So that will help you think outside the box. Problem number 7. Over catering. This is a logistical issue. Leftovers kill profits. Leftover food, leftover prizes, leftover Mother's Day store stock, anything like that. So the first time you run an event, you're almost playing a guessing game, and it's tricky. But it gets easier over time, the more experience you get. So if you don't have an idea, ask around for similar groups, or join, like, we've got a VIP fundraising whisperer group. You're free to join that, and you can just go in and ask other experienced volunteers, or your suppliers, depending who your you're dealing with, the suppliers often have a pretty good sense. Like if you're ordering show bags for the first time, you phone them up and go, this is the number of kids, it's the number of people are expecting to attend on the day. What would you order? And I always say, where possible, under order with the capacity to place additional orders to meet the needs sort of towards the end. Like always a better way to go, or have some capacity to refund. So, if you're buying a handful of things from somewhere like Kmart or whatever for a Father's Day stall, don't unpack everything or have it all out and ready. Have it there in reserve, but if it's not sold, just go get your refund on it, just so you're not wasting money or having to store things or, that's pretty obvious. So that actually kind of leads into problem number 8. Not preparing a handover report for the next coordinator. If a big company like BHP lost property of their management, the volunteer committees do, it would be chaos, absolute chaos. Like it's actually almost criminal, the loss of knowledge that happens within volunteer committees. So one way to capture it is just to have a standard handover report template, like almost a tick and flick. I've got examples on our website, steal them, I don't need credit. But just so that every time you run an event, you can ask some standard questions. Obviously, your supplier contact information, quantities ordered, what was left over, but then some more analytical stuff. Not only what was left over, what sold out, but when did it sell out? Like if you'd have ordered double of them, do you reckon you would have sold them all? Like what was the most popular thing at that stall? And recommendations, if I were to order it again, this is what I would have done. So that when you go into it next time, the new coordinator can pick it up and go, oh, I actually have knowledge here to work from. I don't have to go and make the same mistakes. So it's that process of capturing and improving and learning that it gives new people confidence to come in for a start because they're supported by knowledge, but also just allows everyone to contribute to like an evolving and improving committee. I recommend obviously store them in a folder that's accessible to everyone, but submit them with the minutes. So at the very least, if you can't find them anywhere else when you're digging back, you can go and find them in the minutes for that month's meeting. There we go. Here's a pretty picture of a folder. That's old-fashioned. Don't do paper copies. In fact, there's a committee here, and one of the ladies on it who used to be on it used to work for me, and they did beautiful work, like a really well-organised committee, beautiful handover documents. Their school was flooded in the 2011 Brisbane floods. Everything was gone. Everything was completely destroyed. So all that good work, obviously not wasted because, there's a lot that's always stuck in here, but just a real pity. So that's just what happens. Problem number 9 is applying too much pressure. And by this, I mean pressure to your supporters, not pressure to volunteers or potential volunteers. I have a saying, and I'd like it to stick with you if possible. There will always be someone in that room who can't afford the raffle ticket, no matter how fancy the room. If you always keep that in mind, then you can always manage your approach and you will not apply too much pressure. I like the concept of like a lucky door prize. Like if you're going around selling raffle tickets at an event, having like a lucky door prize, here's your free ticket. We've also got these tickets available, and not have them all extortionately priced, but just invite them without pressure. If they say no, thank them and move on. It's possibly not because they're being a real cow, it's possibly because they just can't afford it. So just be sensitive of people. I'm sure you all are anyway. You're good people. Okay, problem number 10 is not making it fun. Yes, Hannah, you're saying use Dropbox to store and organize all documents. Totally, 100%. 100%, and and I'm actually working on getting a folder structure, like a sample folder structure done to share. I haven't actually got one to share, but I might hit you up, Hannah, to see how you organize yours and then share that. I'll deal with it later, but on our website, we have a whole bunch of resources, you know, sponsorship templates, handover report templates, to, you know, checklists for running stalls, risk management, blah, 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 the whole lot. And you just become a member of the site, which is free, and you can access it all, download it, change it, do whatever you like. But yeah, so this folder structure. So if you've got any ideas, get in touch. So not making it fun. It's easy to get dragged down with the burden that you so often can feel when you are involved in running a committee. And it's not always fun. So making something fun out of something that is inherently not always wildly fun can be challenging. But if you remember and realize that people are attracted, people want connection, people are seeking connection, and half the time that is why they're involved with the school. You know, first they want to contribute to making their kids' education fantastic. They want their kids to see them active, but they also want to experience connection for themselves. And connection, it's the stuff of life. And I think that younger people, I've got older kids and younger kids. I see the older kids, you know, I think they struggle with real life connections. And I see, because everything is done sort of via technology, they tend to stick to the same people in a way. So providing the scope for people to connect with each other, and that happens when you create a fun environment. So if you have a working bee, like, just make sure it's a relaxed atmosphere, you know, ice-breaking exercises. You can go watch the first webinar that I ran with WACSSO if you didn't watch that one already. We talked through some ice-breaking activities. You know, it sounds really hokey and, you know, bullshit or whatever, but it's just not. Like, if you just manage to let people be themselves and have some fun, then volunteering is not going to be a drain on their energy. It's going to contribute to it. So you're going to attract more people, and it's going to be a better experience. You're going to come up with better ideas, and which means that, there we go, you're going to attract people. There we go. That were my 10. I actually wrote that in a recent article, that top 10 list of common problems. I have a handful of others, small ones, that I'll run through, and then we can get on to discussions. Oh, Rebecca says you have a USB that gets passed on to the next person. Yes, that's a good idea, as long as obviously there is a backup. I know for my own committee, we have a Gmail account that we use with also the Google Drive folders. So all the executives have access to the email, and then through that access to documents and spreadsheets and all of that. Okay. Other complications. Personality issues. I'm not going to come up with simple fixes for this. It just comes up. If you're lucky, it doesn't. If you're unlucky, it can be a bit of a deal breaker with committees, and people will walk away who otherwise would have energy and capacity to contribute. So as a volunteer committee, you do not have the freedom to hire for cultural fit. So you run a business, you have a certain culture, and you just make sure whoever you bring on board sort of matches in with your culture and will fit in with your team. A volunteer committee, you take your volunteers as they come. And they could be completely different, like either culturally or personality-wise, and it's just your job to make space for them and value them and find something in what they contribute that is of value. Years ago, at a different school I was volunteering at, we had somebody, he was a public servant and he was a real stickler, and his approach was quite confrontational. That was just him. And my word, he would frustrate me. He would, so where are the, where's the cost benefit analysis? Where's this? Where's that? And I'm like, dude, I'm a volunteer. Stop, But then I go, actually, if it was left up to me, I'd probably just never write anything down, just wing everything. And we need people like that. I need to be kept accountable. He brings a lot of value. I don't sort of, get back in my own head and see that that he actually has a good point. Then I'm not allowing him to contribute and add the value that he can add. So it's a challenge, but it's just your job to not dislike anyone and make sure everyone appreciates what their value is and that you communicate that value. Tough job. Okay, administrative burden. This is where I guess delegating is a great thing. There are people within your broader community who have capacities, probably outside of hours to do, spreadsheeting or newsletters. We have a volunteer at our school who we have a newsletter just every term. And that's all she does. She doesn't do anything else, but that's her one contribution. She works full time. She can fit that into what she does. So you just, again, try and break down your tasks and share them with people who have the capacity to do them. Overspending on events. This is kind of overlapping with our previous issue of leftover stock, but it's not. I'll tell you a story. It happened several years ago, and it was a combined primary and high school, and they run a big community event, like a festival-y type thing that the broader community knows about and comes along to. So it's sort of an established, successful event. There was a band were all the rage because of some reality TV show. I can't even remember who it was. So they booked them for the following year's festival. But two things happened. By the time that came around, these guys weren't really much of a draw card anymore. And the second thing was it rained. And because of the expense of getting this band as their big draw card, they lost substantial money. And losing money on an event, oh my goodness, like breaks your heart. So, and another example, there's a fete that always did quite well, beautifully organised, great community feel. A new organiser came on board and just wanted it to all look amazing. So hired a stage, did a lot of, the infrastructure stuff. So yeah, it looked more amazing than it ever had before, but did not make as much money. I mean, you're spending a couple of $1,000s on a stage and the sound gear. Unless you get that fully sponsored, then, it's just not money you need to spend. So money spent is money saved is money you don't have to raise. My second last point before we get on to discussion is conflict with leadership. And by this, I mean for you guys, like the principal. Very important to work with them, and a good principal will take the lead on that. They'll take you with them on their journey, to the point where you might even sit down and go over their budgets with them and just go, okay, well, we can take on this part and this part, or, you know, here are the gaps where we can make a contribution. I know a lot of schools make donations to the school for them to be able to do things, you know, where they can. But it's great to be able to take that contribution and use it to sell your benefit to your supporters and your school and the students. So instead of going, well, here's our normal, you know, $5,000 a term school donation, you know, you look at what they're spending money on and go, okay, well, you're just buying hand sanitizing stations for every classroom. That's ours. That's a P&C expense. Okay, you're buying new readers for blah. Okay, that's a P&C expense, you know. So then you can go, well, this is what the P&C have achieved, you know, with your raised funds. Yeah, and then you can sell your benefit that way. So working with the identifying opportunities, understanding what their goals are, invaluable. My final one is compliance issues. And here I'm going to plead the fifth, because this is where you need to work with WACSSO or, you know, whatever peak body you operate under, because these guys are amazing at helping you resolve those kinds of issues. So you don't need to make that stuff up. These guys are there to work with you and help you. So that is my prepared little thing. And please, yes, let's ask some questions, or if you've had some challenges you'd like to share and how you